this is an important thing to talk about because, there are many ways that accessibility and safe spaces present, and it really does vary based on your context, what you can even hope for. And I think that it's extra important for people in places that are progressive to double down on making sure that they're accessible and safe for people when there's so many places that we're not.
Welcome to Towards a Kinder Public, a podcast dedicated to designing kinder public space that better meets our interconnected needs. I'm Kevin Castle, and along with Annie Chen, we are Kinder Public. We are so fortunate to share this discussion with Han Malyn, who has worked and volunteered in the nonprofit sector for over 15 years across a broad range of areas including visual arts, arts education, the LGBTQI plus community, human rights, and ending poverty. You'll also hear some references to the podcast that Han did with their spouse called Han and Matt Know It All, which reviewed and expanded on the feedback given in advice columns. Han is now based in the greater DC area. Han uses the pronouns they, them. I use the pronouns she, her. We will discuss the design of better public space from the perspective of queer spaces and intersectionality, meaning using empathy as a design principle and seeking to meet actual needs based on how we really live our lives, rather than allowing architecture to enforce rigid categorizations. Is there a relationship between restrictions on breastfeeding, accessibility for the disability community, accommodations for dads with small kids, and hospitality for the LGBTQI plus community in public space? Yes, there is, and that's one of the issues that we are going to explore together. Please listen in on this critical discussion that is packed with information and resources, affirmation, and warmth and laughs as well. The episode is rated clean for language, but we are providing a content advisory. For survivors, the LGBTQI plus community, and parents, be advised that there is some reference to male violence, assault, and suicide. Please listen with some discretion.
Well, it's good to see you. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. It's really good to see you. I see a cat too.
Yes, this is Mad-Eye. She is 15 years old and in charge of my life, and I'm not allowed to have any sort of call or meeting without her.
Absolutely not. I have a cat who may show up soon too.
They know who's in charge, and it's not us.
That's right. As well it should be.
Yeah, right. So look, they domesticated themselves and us. What did we really expect to happen? That's what I always find funny is that humans didn't domesticate cats. They just decided to live with us because it was easier.
Right. Right. Oh, amazing. Welcome, cat.
Thank you. Yeah. Han and Mad-Eye talking about public spaces. She says, I'm agoraphobic and therefore there should be no public spaces.
Yeah.
I haven't done a podcast since we took ours off the air in 2019. So.
Oh, I wasn't aware that you were off the air.
Yeah. At some point, it stops being fun, especially when all the advice columns are about the world is on fire and half my family are bigots. What do I do? And we're like, don't talk to them anymore. Sorry about that.
Right.
Yeah, it's I'm like, can't you all have entertaining problems anymore? Why do they got to be real world problems?
Right. Oh, goodness. Well, I'm hoping we're going to give lots of advice to people. Yeah,
I'm good with it as long as people know that I'm not actually qualified in any way other than my own lived experiences.
I'm weeping already. It's gonna be hard to tell what emotional state Kevin is in today because
look, that'll make me feel better because honestly, I've been on very high emotional alert these days because
yeah.
Existing in the world's really not fun right now.
Yes, it's really hard. I have to acknowledge, I was very angry, sad, all the things while I'm trying to write these questions. And I'm like, these are not the questions I would have wanted to write a year ago.
Yeah.
These are not the questions I would have wanted to write 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Thank you for bearing with me because I want to find the way into this conversation.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's really hard. The conversations have really shifted, like especially in recent months. It's gone from like have single stall restrooms so that anybody of any gender can use them to please don't sexually assault me for going into a restroom and call it legal.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So it's a lot. I'm glad it's Pride Month because at least there's like positive things to like reinforce positive queer communities. But my spouse, when we moved to DC, we moved because he got a job at Amtrak and we get free train tickets, which is great. I go back to New York all the time, but it's our 10-year wedding anniversary this year, and we had planned to do a cross country train trip because we thought that'd be fun. I can't go through the middle of the country safely anymore. There is no path through middle America. There's just not a way through.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
if you've seen that map that's like the dark red and orange and whatever of like where there's anti-trans laws.
Yeah.
The entire middle swath of the country. So yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad you're doing this. I feel like this is an important thing to talk about because, there are many ways that accessibility and safe spaces present, and it really does vary based on your context, what you can even like hope for. And I think that it's extra important for people in places that are progressive to like double down on making sure that they're accessible and safe for people when there's so many places that we're not.
Right.
So
that's right. You have to stop the spread of the antagonistic viewpoint. It's interesting. You say 10 years ago, and congratulations on your anniversary. Just about 10 years ago, I was in the middle of the country, having just had a baby there, and I was hiding in my car in parking lots trying to breastfeed this infant as we were trying to drive back across the country. And I remember being in states where there were like very current instances of women being arrested in parking lots in their cars at the back of the mall parking lot where no one else is.
Yeah.
With like blankets in the windows because it was exposing themselves indecently. I'm like, this is feeding an infant.
Yeah.
So like it was very upsetting.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a friend who was like, oh, this isn't anyway the same. And I was like, no, it is. But who was talking about being pregnant and needing to make a cross country trip and having to trace a route through states where if something went wrong, she wouldn't die because they wouldn't do life-saving procedures because of anti-abortion laws. And she was like, I can't go through certain parts of the country because if an emergency happens while I'm there, they'll just let me die.
Right.
And I was like, yep, that's where we're at.
That's where we're at.
It really sucks. It really sucks. It's terrifying.
I appreciate you sharing that because I don't want to equivocate everyone's loss. Because everyone is experiencing like a very particular kind of loss at this moment, but at the same time, like if there's anything that Annie and I want to convey, it's that our safety is all interconnected. Like you either have a principle of upholding safety and dignity for people or you don't. And I think what we're seeing is the erosion of that and how it will continue to diminish people's safety and dignity, and it will not have discretion.
Yeah. It's the whole thing that, ages and ages ago, the like first they came for
thing
where it's like, it's just demographic by demographic. And I'm like, y'all, you're keeping an eye on trans people and being like, oh, well, and I'm like, it's trans people and women now. It's just going to be bit by bit. Like your early stages of The Handmaid's Tale, my dudes. Like,
that's right.
And I don't know. I mean, especially coming from like a Jewish background, I'm like, we've seen this happen before.
That's right.
I'm trying to get like the really emotional parts out beforehand, but outlawing gender affirmative care for children is murder because trans kids who can't get care kill themselves, and they are doing this intentionally. They don't not know that statistic. They want us all to die. And it's eugenics, and it's gone in cycles forever. And right now, it's just so blatant, and nobody seems to be able to stop it. Like there are the sanctuary states and that have really strong protections, but for every state that's like that, there are states that are trying to extradite people to punish them for doing things that they don't like in other states. It's crazy times.
Right.
Yeah. I feel very lucky that I'm able to live in a state that has strong protections and that most of the people that I care about and want to spend significant time around are also in states like that. So I can feel safe going to visit them. But like one of my grandmas is in Florida and I'm like, sorry, it is what it is. I'm not safe flying into an airport in Florida. I am not willing to go through airport security someplace that would have no problem sexually assaulting me and calling it legal. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's good times.
Yeah. I feel like we've already had such a lot to talk about. I need to introduce you.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you for joining us this morning. You have so many areas of interest and expertise. Can you talk a little bit about your professional background and other roles where you put your energy?
Yeah. So I sort of ended up in a professional do-gooder role, not really intentionally. I came out of undergrad with business and economics and art degrees, not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I ended up with a job at a synagogue. And it was a very progressive synagogue. They shared a building with a very progressive, I don't remember what sector of Christianity, but with a very progressive Christian church. It was very Gilmore Girls, where it was like you close the doors on the thing where they keep the Torah, and then it was a cross, and so they could switch it for services. And so that was sort of my first dipping my toe professionally into nonprofit world. And they did a lot of social justice stuff. It was a really positive environment. But I had fallen in love with New York years before that. And so I decided to go to grad school in New York, and I went into nonprofit arts administration because the arts had really been, when I was growing up, as kind of a weird kid in the suburbs, where I found my people. All the weird kids gravitate to the arts. And I wanted other people to have access to that because I came from, middle to upper middle class white suburbia. And I was very aware of the fact that people in other areas did not have access to the things that I do. Their schools didn't have budgets for the things that mine did. They didn't have, free tickets to museums and stuff like I did through parents' work. Like it just wasn't the same thing. And so I went into that, and I ended up interning at a few different museums and nonprofits. And the one that stuck the longest was a tiny community design and arts nonprofit called Hester Street Collaborative in New York, in Chinatown, which has, when I was there, was like 3 employees and an intern, and I didn't even have a desk. I had a laptop on my lap, and I looked at them recently, and they've got like 20 full-time staff, and their budget is like 20 times what it was when I was there. And I'm like so proud of them because they do really cool work. But it was this mix of, they worked with the schools, and they did like community design projects with the kids that went there. And then they also did like community surveys and like talked to people, what do you want your green space used for, and whatever. And that was all really neat. From there, I went into Q Art Foundation, which is where you met me, which was a small nonprofit art gallery that also did arts education, et cetera. But while I was there was when the first round of the Black Lives Matter protests happened, which was, I believe, 2014. And I sort of realized my level of privilege coming from a white presenting background. I'll throw behind that I'm Jewish. It falls into this weird category of like whether people count it as white or not depends on whether they hate you or not. But I look white, and so I have white privilege. So there's that. But I recognize that, like I was coming from a perspective of I wanted to like bring the arts and stuff to schools, and there were kids getting shot on their way to school because of what they looked like. So I decided I wanted to look for jobs that could address that sort of thing more directly. And so I ended up going into human rights, and I went and worked at Amnesty International for 6 years, who, for anyone who doesn't know them, look them up. Amazing organization, covers full spectrum human rights defense. And from there, I recently came to Oxfam International, which is another international nonprofit doing humanitarian and anti-poverty work. So that's been my arc in terms of profession. And then outside of that, I have on and off been on the board of a small LGBTQ community nonprofit in my area called the Moco Pride Center, who do much more like local organizing and advocacy and events for the queer community in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is the DC metro area. So I've sort of been at all sizes and all like a bunch of different areas of I always joke, I'm like SJW work. People started using that term as a derogatory, and I was like, I'll double down on it. I'm a social justice warrior for sure. Like what I care about is making people's lives better and safer, and making sure that they have access to things that I did or didn't regardless. And yeah, so that's where I'm at. And I did a podcast for a couple of years called Han and Matt Know It All with my spouse. That was a meta advice column podcast where we read advice columns, picked questions we thought were interesting and that could be dug into more on the subject matter and talked about them. So we brought a lot of sort of progressive, queer, intersectional lens to things that we thought maybe there were aspects that were missing from, and just discuss bonker stuff. So that was on the air for about 2 years. And yeah, this is sort of what I like to do, is help people and tell them how to live their lives, which is nosy and also fun.
I love that you're nosy.
I can't help it. People are so interesting. I just like,
and they need your help.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, I know how to fix that one. Hold on.
So in this first part of our conversation, we are planning to speak about women and gender minorities and queer people. And for the purposes of our discussion, we're using the right terms? And how should we define these groups of people? Are there frameworks or concepts we should use? And do these groups share any overlapping needs?
Yeah, so this is such a complicated question because how people define things tends to be really personal. In my mind, I consider women to be anybody who identifies as a woman, whether they are cisgendered and were assigned female at birth, or whether they are trans women, or whether they are non-binary, but also identify as women, which some people sort of take on multiple labels. It's all very personal decisions. I consider, like, for me, when I think of gender minorities, I think of people that either don't fall on the binary or are not cisgendered. I think that both of those can count. I think some people that are trans binary probably don't consider themselves gender minorities. But again, it's a personal thing. You know, I'm non-binary and I consider myself transgender, but some non-binary people don't. And queer, I think, kind of is the same thing, where I use it as an all-encompassing term for myself and for my community. I also like to call us the alphabet mafia because there's so many letters now. But I think that, you know, LGBTQIA plus encompasses a whole range of, you know, gender orientation, sexuality, or lack thereof. But not everybody who could be assigned one of those letters necessarily identifies as part of that community or likes that term. So it's very nuanced, and I don't know that there is a correct approach. I think that for every person who tries to set out definitions, there's somebody else that will tell them, no, you're wrong, or one of the ways you're using this is problematic and this is why. So I try to be open to the perspectives of people and trust their lived experiences and what they're comfortable with and respect that, but also be true to my, you know, sense of myself. And I basically approach it with just sort of a do no harm or do as little harm as possible approach.
That's right. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out our website, kinderpublic.com, for more information about our guest and the topic, as well as a full transcript of the conversation, which can be found on the podcast page. A captioned episode is also available on our YouTube channel, where we are at Kinderpublic. If you have enjoyed an episode of Towards a Kinder Public, we would love your help in sharing the episode with others. Please also consider leaving us a rating and a review. It helps us make our topics more visible, and we really appreciate your support. I'm Kevin Castle. My guest has been Han Malyn. Our conversation will continue in the next episode. Please take extra care. We'll see you next week.